Alright gamers, we got yet another role guide for Season 7. The final update of the season will be tomorrow and we're pumping out these role guides. Today is probably my least experienced role, but I have played it on a high enough level that I feel like I can teach it and I can hold my own. I think it's my weakest role, but it is pretty close. The typical disclaimer as always, this guide is not the Bible, I'm not married to everything I say. This is just what I know, my knowledge. Take it for yourself to learn and improve. With that being said, let's get started with solo lane. So what is a solo laner? Solo laners are frontliners who go into the short lane or the solo lane, whatever you want to call it. They are generally warriors and guardians, are supposed to be tanks with a little bit of damage mixed in. They jump on the carries and basically make them want to not play the game. So pre-game, you don't really have to worry about anyone besides the other solo laner and the jungler. Your relic choice is generally always going to be the same of either Blink Beads or Blink Thorns. Your start is usually just Blessing with Chalice and Multi-Pots. Support can visit, but it's pretty rare. Alright, so laning phase as a solo laner. Every start's generally the same. You'll start at the blue buff, you beat on the man, you go to lane, and then you hope and pray that you get a lot of minions. Usually it will be just 1 melee and 3 archers, but you can get more. Clear the wave and feel good, not now that you're level 2. Laning phase is pretty reliant on matchups and where your god peaks. Some gods want constant fights in lane, some just want to escape laning phase as soon as possible. Some matchups are better than others, but that doesn't automatically mean one side is always going to win. Clear the wave, get poked with your warrior's blessing, play around power spikes. When it comes to gods with great early clear, do not give them the early game they want. It's okay to give up pressure and let tower eat some minions sometimes. So many people struggle against Gooby and Hades and think they're so good because they fight into that great early game. It sucks, but sometimes you gotta give it up and play for late. Try not to fight and wait for obvious reasons. Totem pressure is actually quite useful and valuable, but if you have low pressure and you're a guardian solo or something, you're probably not gonna be getting it most of the time. You also have to be able to be fine being the one on the island, meaning you are getting no jungle help, you are on your own. Some gods like Guan Yu feel really bad when this happens, but you just got to suck it up and deal with it and take it for the team. I've won so many games by playing defensively and letting the jungler live rent-free in my blue buff that are wasting all this time trying to kill me and I'm just sitting there. So proxying, it's a big thing you have to learn to do if you want to be a real good solo laner. Proxying is where you clear the next wave in advance, usually past the tower line, so you can rotate without losing farm and your tower. Be smart with it and be aware that some gods will proxy better than others and realize when it's worth it. When you proxy, you either want to rotate out afterwards and beat up on the baby mid laner or do a gold fury fight, or you want to be able to force a rotation onto you so you're wasting the mid laner or the jungler's time. Dying for a proxy isn't always the worst thing depending on how much they waste. So team fighting as a solo laner. Solo laners are some big strong frontliners whose job is to pretty much harass the enemy backline. You work in tandem with the junglers to dive that little carry and mage and beat them up. Usually you want to be living rent free in the backline, but you can definitely peel and do support things as well. Be aware of your limits as well. You can't just W key at the enemy every single time, no matter how fun that may be. Coordinating with your jungler will help out a lot, whether it's targeting a certain backliner or tanking for them so they can get off their own damage. You can create mismatches when it comes to numbers, which can change the tide of the fight. If you can take on more than one person and at least decently trade with them, you're doing a good job. Try and force those engagements and use that mix of tankiness and damage to occupy more than one person. If you can jump on a backline, you can force relics or someone else to come help them out. And creating space is a big part of being a solo laner. It is a very important stat that you never see on your stat line as a number. It's pretty much how separate you are pushing the other team, or at least a part of the other team, away from your team. If you're constantly taking 2 or 3 people out of the fight, you are creating a lot of space. This is an important thing around objectives. Usually the support tanks the objectives and you have to force the enemy to walk through you. Usually no one wants to do that because you're tanky and you do damage, so no one's going to want to go through you. So creating space around objectives makes it harder for them to contest or secure the objective. Right, sieging as a solo laner is pretty similar to defending around objectives. It's called zoning when you're doing this and creating space around objectives or the towers and phoenixes. You just want to be making as much space as possible. You want to make it hard for the other team to touch your DPS and keep them safe. You're going to dive on the backline and make space and zone. On offense, you want to make space so the ADC can safely kill the Phoenix and all your other boys can get off their damage. On defense, you want to make it as hard as possible for them to take the Phoenix and just throw your body at them, run at them, use thorns, whatever you gotta do. Also, relic usage as a solo laner. Good relics can turn an above average solo laner into a dangerous killing machine. Usually you'll be going blink thorns or blink beads. Usually it's blink thorns, but people like Set and Wukong thrive off of their mobility, and having no CC immunity on someone like Set makes beads pretty useful. Usually you want thorns if you're getting beat up or if you want to solo the hunter. Thorns, especially when upgraded, makes hunters want to uninstall the game, so use that wisely. Because a lot of the time, especially late game, they can actually be the one shredding you instead. Use blink to initiate or escape, or use beads to escape something or to keep up the rampage. Alright, so builds and items on solo laners. Builds are always a volatile thing as always, that's no exception here. This is liable to change patch by patch. Solo laners have a lot of variety and choices with build paths on their items in this meta. A lot of it can be based off of preference and playstyle and options, so I'll just go over some of the good items and who would they be good for. Stone of Guy is a great sustain item, but it's only for those with no built-in sustain. If you can heal on your own like Amma or Shock, you do not need this thing. If you're an Osiris, King Arthur and such, this is a really good item for you. Soul Leader only gets a mention because Wukong is great for it, but it's pretty bad on everyone else not named Wukong. A lot of warriors can go reinforced instead of warrior boots because they have really good base stats, but again, it's really a preference and how big your lead is. Glad Shield is a great option for the ability boys in the world. Berserkers and Frostbound are cool for the auto attackers like Amma. Void Shield is still a good item, don't sleep on it, especially because of the pen that it gives you. Onis, Genjis, and Shoguns are all really good. Get Onis if you feel like you're getting bursted, Genjis for the cooldown, and Shoguns for auto attackers. Sledge is the only hammer in that tree besides Frostbound that I would ever consider getting. Blackthorn is quite odd right now. It's not bad for the cooldown. If you're playing something like a Naja or something, it's fine. Pridewind is really good, and it gets better especially if you're building Glad Shield because of your build path with all the prots. And Mantle's always a great option. You can't go wrong with rounding out your build with a Mantle. Alright, so God choice in the solo lane. Just like with builds, this will fluctuate, especially this season. It seemed to have fluctuated quite a bit. Different gods have different playstyles. Most Guardian solos like Sobek and Xingqian are viable, but you're just playing for late game. Some of the other gods you want to really get loose with and be proxying early like on Vomit and Wukong. Some are early bullies like the Kukulane and King Arthur. Most warriors trends toward being early game, but some are late game. Guan and Amma are some late game monsters. The meta picks right now are King Arthur, Cthulhu, Amma, Guan Yu, Set, and Wukong. It's not a very set meta. There's not really one god I'd say is really at the top besides Set. Everyone else is good, but there's no clear number 2, 3, or 4 option past Set. But pretty much play what you like, but be aware of what is good at the time and what's good for builds at the time. That's all I have today, gamers. This may be my least best role, but I got some raid knowledge, and I hope you can all learn from it. It is not a Bible to study, as always, but it is good knowledge, and I'll see you all in the next role guide.